Hi, I'm Ed Yaw. At County College of Morris, we believe all citizens need to be informed about the important issues that affect their daily lives. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Creative Beginnings in Early Education, next on Caucus, New Jersey.
Funding for this edition of Caucus, New Jersey has been provided by the PNC Foundation, which supports early childhood education through Grow Up Great, a multi-year initiative to help prepare children from birth to age 5 for success in school and life. NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, the New Jersey Education Association, working for great public schools for every child. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital, the heart of academic medicine. Health Republic Insurance of New Jersey, and by Johnson & Johnson. Promotional support provided by the Star Ledger, powering NJ.com, and by NJ Biz, all business, all New Jersey.
Welcome to Caucus, New Jersey. I'm Steve Adubato. You know, the evidence is clear that a strong foundation in early education is critical for success later in life. In the first part of a two-part series, here to discuss creative approaches to early childhood education, we have Michelle Marigliano is the Special Projects and Assessment Coordinator for Young Audiences, Arts for Learning. Our good friend Linda Bowden, well, you're all our good friends, but Linda's been here before. She is the New Jersey Regional President for PNC. Ty Stevens is a teaching artist for the great Sharron Miller Academy for Performing Arts. And finally, Ronnie Ragen is the Community Partnership Director at the Trenton Community Music School. I want to thank all of you for joining us. Throughout this program, you're going to see a variety of websites, your collective websites of your nonprofit organizations, and how you can find out more about the great Grow Up Great initiative. By the way, before we start talking about creative beginnings in early childhood, the history on Grow Up Great and why it's been so important, particularly for our world in PBS. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, thank you, Steve. And I would like to say we partner with everyone here and in fact, longstanding support with Ronnie and her group. I would say probably 10, 11, 12 years ago, PNC had obviously a foundation and had really always worked hard to be a community partner, but we decided to put a very specific stake in the ground around children 5 and younger. The idea being that this is where we really wanted to concentrate our efforts. This is where we felt we could really make a difference. And I know we're going to talk about how that's done through the work of the folks here. But really, from that point, our employee volunteer hours, 40 paid hours a year, are devoted to that 5 and under segment. We have regular drives for those children, and we really work hard to ensure that our foundation dollars are going to the right places here in New Jersey.
And it's interesting because it's so interesting when we talk about early childhood education. It comes in all different forms. But this is talking about creative beginnings. And Ronnie, I want to ask you, set up this video piece we're about to see, because this is a great example of what we're talking about in terms of very creative beginnings. We're about to see a piece of video that is called?
It's the opening to a typical music for the very young class in a Trenton pre-K classroom for 4-year-olds.
For 4-year-olds?
4-year-olds.
Are they singing a particular song?
They're singing their hello song.
The hello song?
The hello song.
What's better than that? And the name of your place again is?
The Trenton Community Music School.
Listen, the hello song from the Trenton Community School. Let's go for it.
Hello, everybody. So glad to see you. Hello, everybody. So glad to see you. Hello, I'm Lydia. So glad to let's tap her. Hello, I'm Bernasia. So glad to see you. Hello, I'm Jasper.
When my son Jasper came home with the music together, he came home with the book and the CD. And when he came home, he was really excited. It was like, you know, Mom, look, you know, we're doing this at school and I get to bring it home with me.
Music does matter, doesn't it?
Music does matter.
We'll talk about dance, talk about the whole thing, but talk about music.
Well, music matters, I think, in a deeper way than maybe our culture even begins to understand. For these children, what we just observed was that was the end of the year. They didn't start out knowing to tap and knowing to sing and come in on time and to almost be right there on the pitch. It was much more amorphous, and here they are owning what it is that they've been doing all year.
And they're proud, aren't they?
And they're proud, and this is me. Hello, I'm Brianna. Hello, I'm Jasper, and I think there's a great deal of development that happens through that, but they're also going. They're developing musically, but they're also doing all kinds of things in the classroom. They're learning to take turns. We just watch them take turns, where the class will move on to do small and large motor movements. They will do all kinds of language development. Another way to do the hello song is, we went on a trip to the farm. So now everybody, instead of being themselves, will sing, you know, I'm a cow.
So they're imagining.
So they're
Creative.
imagining, and they're making it up as they go. So they're getting musical skills, they're learning to do improvisation, but they're also doing all kinds of...
The other piece of this is, and I always like to say full disclosure when I need to disclose, and it isn't just that PNC is a big supporter of public broadcasting, but the other thing is that our daughter Olivia is, and I said this right before we got on the air, is with the Sharron Miller Dance Group. Not that she's performing anywhere publicly that you could see her, but she loves it. And I remember when she first went in the first day, she's turning 4 in the fall as we do this program. She didn't get out of the corner. She just would not. We went to the graduation. It was hard for her to wait for her turn. She wanted to show us everything she could do, and she was out there, and she went home and she practiced. Am I making too much of what it does for her, more importantly, not just her self-esteem, everybody else?
No, I think as a matter of fact, there could be more said about it. I mean, you could get more exaggerated, more excited, and more. I think the word exaggerated, it would work.
What does dance do for kids early on?
It gives them a sense of themselves, of their bodies, of the control that they have over their lives, even in a small way. They're not conscious that that's what they're doing, but they are taking ownership of their bodies. They're taking ownership of their lives in a small way, and learning how to move a certain way, learning how to move to music, learning how to follow instructions, learning how to do things that a lot of kids don't learn how to do.
And wait a minute, you also talk about music and math.
Exactly.
What's up with that?
Well, everything in music, everything in dance is the same formula that we use for math. And that's how I introduce most of my classes, is to relate it to their arts and their maths and their sciences, because they don't get that immediately. They don't understand that this is exactly the same thing, but we're putting it in physical form, and we're putting music to it, and we're dancing. We're moving our bodies to do exactly the same thing that you do in math.
Isn't there also a strong neurological component, whether we're talking about music or dance or the arts, developing skill with spatial relationships as an example, or the neurological aspect of having to think differently as you sing? They say our brains are wired for music.
By the way, before you go any further, Linda, talk to folks about your background before you get into corporate life, because people are saying, hey, for a person as a banking executive, she knows a lot. Tell folks about your background.
Well, I was a teacher. I was a teacher prior to going into banking, but actually have been in banking for over 30 years, but have always had a strong relationship, interest and relationship with the topic.
Jump in, Michelle.
The one common theme that I'm hearing is this idea of play. When we watched the video, the children were playing together with rhythm. When we listened to Ty's story, we heard about how children were playing with their sense of body positioning in space and moving through space, Linda brought to our attention. And we know through early childhood research that play is essential for the development of the brain. And so whether that's dramatic play outside on the playground, or playing with materials like instruments, or playing with the body as a tool of creating, we know that it's essential for learning.
You know, I'm curious about, kids grow up in so many different environments. And so Linda, what I'm thinking about is the children who grow up in certain socioeconomic situations, certain communities, where it's harder to access. I mean, Trenton is a challenging place, Camden, Newark, where I grew up in Newark. I just think to myself, it is harder in certain communities, is it not, for kids to have access to great programs, which is why a program like yours is great. Do they need something different than other kids need, or do all kids, early childhood, they all need the same stuff?
Well, you know, I would point out something that is of great concern, I think, to everyone in this room. A lot of the arts programs have been cut in the lower income school districts. And so how will the kids get exposure to the kinds of things you've just been hearing about? And one thing I neglected to say initially, the Grow Up Great Foundation at PNC is bilingual, and we do focus on low to moderate income areas specifically for exactly that reason. I think not only are these programs terrific in and of their own right, but it really is supplementing and addressing a need that's developed in the past couple of decades.
And what I'd love to add to what Linda's mentioned is how the arts are a universal language. So regardless of what that child's first language is, when they sit in front of a drum or when they start to create that consistent rhythm on their body, or they move their body in a dance class, there's something being said and understood without verbal language.
But there's also a language deficit in the children in the low income
deficit?
classes. When they arrive, their language skills, it's well documented, are behind the level of skill that a more affluent community, a child growing up.
Back up.
Okay.
I'm curious about this. Are you saying that, and again, I don't want to make this about our daughter at all, but I notice she asks a million questions. I sense that she's incredibly verbal, and she said a certain word the other day. I asked my wife, where did she get that word? Did you say that? And so certain kids that have certain advantages because of where they grew up, how they grew up, what they grew up around.
She's been exposed to very complex language and has been spoken to intentionally her whole 3.5 years.
So let's talk about kids at risk, which are not just urban kids.
Not at all.
Describe
Not
it.
at
So
all.
what are they facing from a language deficit perspective? Go ahead.
Well, they enter school with very much fewer words at their command. And what we find in the music class, and even some children entering at 3, may be nearly mute. They just won't speak in the classroom. And what we find in the music class is teachers not infrequently say, it was through the music class that we heard him speak first, or we heard him utter first. He needed to sing. He needed to say his name when the other children were saying their names. Or in the case where we're talking about English is not the first language, and the children aren't able to communicate in the classroom, everybody can sing la la la.
Right, sure.
So the song becomes the way the children bond with one another. So there's this tremendous community building piece of music making. The children are learning to interact with one another. They don't need verbal language. They have the language. You speak of a universal language. I like to also speak of the language of our feelings and emotions.
Sure.
So music, in a way, extends what we can do verbally and allows us to be expressive when we
Stay
don't
on the
have
music
language.
thing, because you said for some children, they may be more likely to utter their first word through music as opposed to in conversation. But I'm also thinking, what about for those children who don't utter their first word through music, but maybe express themselves for the first time through dance?
Yeah,
By the way, you're born and raised in Philly?
Yeah.
And you're how many children?
7. I'm in the middle of 7.
Got it. I just want to get a sense of, you grew up in a certain, what did it say, a challenging environment?
Yeah, very, very, very. Economically more than anything.
Okay.
I mean, there was not a lot of danger other than that, but economically, yeah, lower middle income, lower income, that strata.
Got it.
And yeah.
Express themselves through dance, even, because stay on this deficit issue, language deficit. For kids who come in who do not have a lot of words or they're not saying anything, to what degree do you find dance to be a way for some of these children to actually express themselves, even if they're not using the words?
Well, we're expressing ourselves physically since the moment we enter this world. So that's a common language and I wouldn't say easier language, but it's a more familiar language. So when you bring it to a kid and you formalize it, sometimes they can be resistant because it's formalized, because now you're telling them how to move. But if you give them some freedom to express themselves on the level of where they are, magic can happen.
Can we talk relationships? Because I'll often notice that when you walk into the preschool where our daughter is, some kids easily interacting with other children, play easily with other children, because growing up great also has to do with the ability to interact with other people in any environment, right? To what degree are we talking about creative beginnings and the foundation being based on the need to teach interaction, cooperation?
I actually think we saw that right in the video. Every child had a specific turn. They had to wait his or her turn and to ensure that the other person had a chance. So I think that's an example of just how to conduct oneself in society, but also enjoy the fun of being with another person, that you can really enjoy the skills that that person has, the freedom, the uninhibited approach, and have fun together. There's a lot of joy in, I think, the things that we're talking about.
What happens when a child doesn't have that, though? What happens when a child, and I want not to be negative here, but when a child does not, has whatever, and again, there are certain children that really would have a very hard time, I imagine, because there are certain issues that children have, and I'm not going to open up a Pandora's box, but if a kid can't be in that situation or has a real tough time, what do you do in that situation? Because that kid is facing a whole range of challenges that may be even harder than it is for some other kids.
At Young Audiences, we like to meet children where they are right
Father,
now.
describe your place again for folks.
Yeah, so Young Audiences is a not-for-profit organization that brings the arts into schools and community centers. Creative Beginnings, our early childhood program, specifically focuses on professional development for preschool teachers. And so how do we listen to preschool teachers and the schools that they work in and understand their needs better, and then work alongside of them so that they gain a deeper understanding about how we embed dance and music and storytelling and visual arts into the daily lives of children.
Go back to the question of a child who's really struggling in a classroom. I was watching that video and I'm thinking, wow, those kids are really getting along well. Everyone's taking their turn. It's so terrific. But I have seen, and we all have seen, the child that's really struggling.
I've seen those children who are really struggling, and you're saying meet them where they are. So they're not required to be in the circle if they can't be, if they're being disruptive. But I also see that they're sitting outside the circle, and then the instruments for the play along come in, and suddenly they are in the circle because they need to play the drum.
Do they I'm sorry for do most children, this early childhood age that we're talking about, do most of them want to be? There's this great scene. I don't know if you ever seen School of Rock. Yeah. There's a great scene where Jack Black, who's no role model for leadership, but in this movie, does this incredible scene where he's getting the kids all riled up because he's getting them in this band, and he's got a singers and he's got a drummer and he's got a guitar player, and he says, "Everybody else relax and enjoy the music of rock." And then this little kid just looks at him and says, "You mean what do the rest of us do?" He says, "Sit back and watch." And the kid says, "You mean we're not in the band?"
Exactly.
Meaning, does every kid want to be in the band?
Yes.
Does every kid want to be in it?
Research tells us that all children are musical. Humans are wired to make music. And I kind of laugh. We accept that birds are musical. We expect birds to be musical. We know even whales sing. But we don't always recognize that humans are, just as we have a natural wiring to walk and talk, it seems that we have it to
even
make
the kid off to the side who's not participating?
Even the kid off is listening, so that there's a receptive capacity and then there's the expressive capacity. They're taking it in, and it may not be till we leave the room that kid's going to go and try it out in the corner, and next week he'll be in the circle.
We're wired, Linda?
Well, absolutely, and I'll tell you, the simplest example in my mind is think of a song you learned in first grade. You, to this day, could probably still sing that song, even if you haven't heard it all these years. Think of a poem you might have learned without music. You probably don't remember that. And Steve, when you talk about the integration of children who tend to hang back, a lot of this goes back to their self-esteem. They're feeling good about themselves. If you feel good about yourself, you're more likely to jump in and feel good about other people. And so I think there's a tremendous connection here.
Stay on that. You want to make another point? Because I already asked about boys versus girls in a second.
Go ahead, because I had another point to make.
No, make that point. Make that point.
No, what I was going to say is I know we've been focused on low to moderate income areas, and the point I wanted to make is, and I'm, by the way, full disclosure, on the Liberty Science Center board, so STEM education is
science, technology, engineering, and math.
Is a very, very important thing, especially in this country. My worry is that it will be mutually exclusive to the arts, and I think. We've got to be.
Well, hold on. We're talking about creative beginnings here. Is somehow science, technology, engineering, math outside of that?
No, that's exactly the point. I want to make sure that there's an integration because music is science in a way.
Well, Ty was just saying it. Go ahead.
Physiologically
And dance is math.
science.
Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I would like to see us do more of is not have them as two separate and discrete approaches to education. I think we've got to find a way to integrate them. I mean, listen to what, these are the experts here. I'm not the expert.
So they're not really logically, and from an academic or teaching point of view, they're not really separate. They're not really.
But we treat them as separately.
But that doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. Because of everything we do in our lives is interconnected. You know, we wouldn't separate cooking from eating.
Or gardening.
Or gardening. It's all, they all come to
Could you do the math? I'm sorry for interrupting. Our producers are begging me to get you to do a really concrete example of the dance and math connection that we go, oh, that's what he's talking about.
Well, we're going back to music. You know, we dance to music and we move to counts because we want to formalize what the movement is. So in order to do that, we have to count it out, and we have to divide it, we have to multiply it, we have to, you know, all those things that we do in math, and then science, of course. Then we add to the science part of moving through space, velocity. Relative movement, relative space, all those things, you know, it's all part of the same ball of wax. Really.
So the Liberty Science Center and the work going on there, and the Sharron Miller Dance Studio, it's not that much different.
I'll tell you, when you get right down to the basics, it really isn't. It really isn't, Steve.
Oh,
The
wow,
essence.
we really make these.
Exactly.
Hold on one second. I want to do the male versus female thing. Growing up great and doing what is necessary for children in terms of this early childhood phase, do you think it's different for little boys versus little girls?
Yeah, I do.
How so?
Because boys are taught, or it's implied in most environments that boys are meant to repress what they feel, and movement. Oh my goodness. If you start moving too broadly and too big and too creatively, something is, you know,
go ahead.
You're labeled. So boys tend to want to just do everything that looks athletic or that feels like.
But what do they
athletic.
really want to do? Because I know our son.
Have fun.
I hate to be bringing up
move.
all of our kids, but our son Chris, who's turning 10 as we do this show. Chris, I'm sorry. When he started dancing at a party the other day, and he forgot people were watching. I have it on video. He likes to shake his behind in a way that is, he just out of control and loves it. But when he's like, Dad, you're not going to show anyone. And now, of course, I talked about it. But the point is, what does the kid really want to do versus what the kid thinks might happen if the other 10-year-old sees what he's doing? Those are two totally different things, right?
Yeah.
I agree. They are
sorry,
two totally
Chris. I
different
really
things.
am.
And I think they're grounded in this social construct of the Western society that we live in.
Is it our thing, Western?
Well, I'm an American, so I can only speak from
My point is, it's not.
perspective
My
right
point is
now.
that's more us than it is other parts of the world.
I think so. I think so. I think it's more American than it is.
Yeah.
You go to Greece, you go to Italy, you go to France, and most of those places, movement and the use of the body is a completely different thing. Just
Certainly, if you go to Africa and if you go to any
Latin American countries.
You know, movement, but we have to understand movement and music are the same coin, right? We can't separate them as arts. But my experience in Trenton was to be surprised and delighted by how much the boys are free to move.
At what age?
At 4 and 5 and 3.
Really?
Absolutely. They are just, and actually the girls will watch them in a way that wouldn't happen in Montclair. Where the boys will be much more circumspect, but except your son.
Well, now I don't know what's going to happen. That's a whole other story.
But
why do you think that is?
Well,
Do you have to create the right environment? Is that what it is?
Well, in my experience in Trenton, there's a strong thread of Latin American culture.
But this was also the African American boys, and we had this wonderful moment where not even just the show off kind of stuff where they do that happily. They're jumping, and it's so
Right.
physical. But we were doing scarves, and I happened to walk by two little boys who were scarving together, and I heard one say, "I really like music. How about you?" And the other one said, "Yeah, I do too." So there's
Linda, final words. By the way, make sure you catch part 2 of this great 2-part series. This is good stuff, no?
Oh, it's terrific stuff. And you know, the final comment I wanted to make is that many of us are parents. We've all been around young children. That's the age where they are uninhibited. That's the age where society hasn't imposed its sort of constricted view of how people should behave, and before they themselves start feeling bad about themselves. So, you know, I just want to end by thanking each of you for the work that you're doing in the community.
Thanks, all of you.
Valuable.
The preceding program has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence, and 13 for WNET, NJTV, and WHYY. Funding for this edition of Caucus New Jersey has been provided by the PNC Foundation, NJIT, the New Jersey Education Association, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital, Health Republic Insurance of New Jersey, and by Johnson & Johnson. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. Caucus New Jersey has been produced in partnership with TriStar Studios. This program has been made possible in part by the Kessler Foundation.